everybody, this is Tim and welcome to the show. You know, streaming music has made it very convenient, but it's almost completely obliterated album art, and I love album art. And for part 2 of the series right here, we're going to visit 10 more LA locations, and some of them are pretty obscure, so let's get started. We're in the bowels of Hollywood right now. We're about 3 or 4 miles east of the Sunset Strip. We're right across the street from Hollywood High here. It's a much grittier part of town. And I'm wondering if you can guess which famous album cover was photographed right here. If you guessed AC/DC's 1976 album, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, you'd be exactly right. Now, I've noticed that a lot of the album cover locations, a graphics company that comes up a lot is Hypnosis. And they've been responsible for the likes of Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Genesis, a whole bunch of them. I had always assumed it had been filmed in some cheap and cheesy Australian motel, but it was done right here in Hollywood in this pretty hookery looking place. I love the music on this record, but I also love that you kind of have to use your imagination for the hidden meaning on the cover. You know, the nefarious goings-on hiding behind the blacked-out eyes, the businessman, the hot stewardess, the nurse, the leather boy. And in Australia, the cover is actually a bit different. And I'm not saying better or worse, but it is different. So I think this is a record that has withstood the test of time. And I can't think of any other album cover that fits a album's music so perfectly as this one. Anyways, AC/DC, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So now we're here in Griffith Park, which is a place that I've actually hiked many, many times. You know, after publishing the first video in the series, I got a lot of comments on places I might want to check out, most of which I was aware of, but the one that did take me by surprise was Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds. So the commentator told me they thought it was in Griffith Park, and after studying the Barry Feinstein fisheye photograph and looking at the railings in the background, I think it is on the Ferndale Trail here. I don't know exactly where, so we are going to have to find it. So a little backstory on photographer Barry Feinstein. He did a lot of Bob Dylan photos back in the day. He took a lot of George Harrison photos, and probably one of his most famous photos was the last photo that Janis Joplin ever took. It was the album cover for her album Pearl. And if that's not iconic, I don't know what is. I have to say, I think the Mr. Tambourine Man album cover photo was a bold statement, and it not only defined the band, but it kind of announced to the world that American rock and roll could hold its own against the British invasion onslaught. All right, this kind of looks promising right here. Because it was a metal rail they were sitting on. This could very well be it. I'm going to look around a little bit more, but this is a definite maybe. All right, so I've just completed a pretty thorough search of the area, and I am convinced that this was where the picture was taken right here. I've studied the album cover pretty thoroughly. There was that rock wall on the one side over there. They were sitting on the railing right here, which is a bit tilted. And then there's this, log wall right there. And keep in mind, this photo was taken 60 years ago, so things do change a little bit. But I have to say, this was one of the seminal rock and roll records ever made, and it put West Coast music on the map. And it happened right here. The Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man. This place isn't the site of an album cover, but I had to include it because the shot taken here by photographer Gregory Freeman is as Los Angeles iconic as it gets. It happened a couple months before releasing Appetite for Destruction, and it took place here in what is possibly the most disputed location in Guns N' Roses folklore. This small bungalow has become known as the Hell House, although the real GNR Hell House was a small storage unit where they lived and rehearsed, whose squalid location was a couple blocks away in a parking lot behind Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard. But the band hung out here often at this house on Fuller Street, with owner Wes Darkeen, and it's where photographer Greg Freeman met them one afternoon after an intense night of partying that hadn't quite ended. Legend has it that the police showed up midway through the shoot to respond to a noise complaint, and when Axl, who is obviously a very persuasive man, boldly asked if the band could pose on their cop car, they agreed. But the real money shot came here on the porch of this very nondescript craftsman bungalow. Guns N' Roses, Fuller Avenue Hell House. Now we're in downtown LA on the 7th Street Bridge over the Harbor Freeway. Now I think Randy Newman is one of those guys that knows what the hell a metaphor is for. And I don't think there's ever been any better use of it than in his song Short People. It's a song that's basically a prejudicial rant about hating people for a trait for which they have nothing to do with, in this case being short. But if you were to substitute the word short for almost any other small-minded word, well, you get the picture. But it was done with such a rare wit and dry humor, and I mean dry like the Sahara, that there were people out there that gave him a load of shit about it because they took the lyrics literally, that he hated vertically challenged people. Anyways, for his 1977 album, Little Criminals, photographer Bob Seideman decided to come to this ever-so-LA bridge to get the pic. But this album, and particularly the message of Short People, I think is more relevant today than perhaps any other time in my lifetime. And I guess some things just never change. Anyways, Randy Newman, Little Criminals. Photographer Henry Diltz and designer Gary Burden were tasked with creating the Crosby, Stills & Nash album cover. You know, they had known the guys in the band from hanging around Mama Cass's house. They had heard their music, and they really weren't sure what to do with the album cover. So they got together one morning, they smoked a couple joints, and they just went out driving to see if they found anything that would inspire them. And they ended up here. We're on Palm Street, maybe 2 or 3 blocks from the Troubadour, right off Santa Monica Boulevard. And in this parking lot right here, there used to be an old, dilapidated house with an even more dilapidated couch in front of it. Diltz had the guys pose on the couch, and he took the shots. The shots weren't developed for a couple more days. When they were, Diltz realized this is a great picture. Unfortunately, the lineup on the couch was Nash, Stills, and Crosby. It was exactly opposite. He tried turning the negative around, but Stills would have been playing left-handed that way. So Diltz and Burden decided to bring the band back here a couple days later and reshoot. When they got here, unfortunately, the house had been bulldozed. It was all sitting, the debris was sitting in the corner over here for this parking lot, so obviously they couldn't reshoot it. And I think that was kind of a good thing, because as in any art, especially music, it's more about the feel than it is about the technical prowess of something. And I really think they nailed it with the photograph right here. So here it is, Palm Avenue. This is Franklin Canyon Park in Beverly Hills, California, and what brings us here today is one of the stranger stories in the annals of music history. In October 1964, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel released their first album called Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. It had a stark folk sound consisting of only the duo singing, accompanied by Paul Simon's acoustic guitar, and included a song called Sound of Silence. But after a couple months, it had sold fewer than 1,000 copies. Seeing the writing on the wall, the duo went their separate ways, and a few months later, Paul Simon found himself living in England playing solo shows when something very strange happened. Columbia Records staff producer Tom Wilson had just had a huge hit with Bob Dylan's electrified Like a Rolling Stone, and was looking for material he could do something similar with. By chance, he saw Sound of Silence on a college radio playlist and remembered it from its Columbia release a couple months back, and decided to hire some session players, and without Simon and Garfunkel's knowledge, recorded a backing track with electric guitar and drums and released it as a single. Now, living in England and totally unaware of what Tom Wilson had done, Paul Simon was informed that he had a top 10 hit in America. So he returned to the States, where he and Art Garfunkel recorded a new batch of more orchestrated songs to go along with it, and released the Sounds of Silence album in January of 1966, which brings us back here to Franklin Canyon Park. Photographer Guy Webster lived nearby and recently had a great success shooting the Rolling Stones here for their album High Tide and Green Grass, and he wanted to see if lightning might strike twice. It did. Simon and Garfunkel, The Sounds of Silence. So how's this for a concept? Let's take a naked man and have him staring up at skyscrapers that look like geodes growing out of the earth. And if we did that, we could call it Going for the One. Listen, by Yes. Never been to shy away from complicated musical arrangements and visuals. The band's previous album covers had been fantastical illustrations by artist Roger Dean, who also designed the Yes logo. But this time around, they wanted to go with something different, and they decided on an idea by graphics artist Aubrey Powell at Hypnosis. There's that name again. There's colored lines emanating from the man's body that are supposed to indicate spiritual energy points. I'm guessing that the naked man wasn't a member of the group. That's just a hunch. But anyways, the record company decided to promote the record with a gigantic billboard on Sunset Boulevard, and they acquiesced and put a pair of pants on the guy. Anyways, Yes, Going for the One. So in August of 1962, Capitol Records staff photographer Ken Veeder, who had previously taken photos of Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra, came here to Paradise Cove in Malibu, California to photograph an unknown band called the Beach Boys. And it happened right here. And as you can see in the photos, they're all just impossibly young. Mike Love's still got a full head of hair, and David Marks looks like he's 12. I think he was actually about 15, but they have on their preferred Pendleton shirts. They were actually known as the Pendletones before changing their name to the Beach Boys. The pics featured a surfboard that actually did belong to the only real surfer in the group, Dennis Wilson, but the photos were somewhat of a double-edged sword. The image that they portrayed was so iconic that the Beach Boys had trouble getting out from under its shadow, even when they matured into adult songwriters. But if this place looks somewhat familiar, it's because it also served as the site of Jim Garner's trailer on the Rockford Files. Anyways, the Beach Boys, Surfing Safari. So now we're just a couple miles down the road in Venice Beach, California, and I think it's a fitting segue because this next band's album has been described as its beach record, and it was photographed right here. Released in 2016, the Weezer White Album is actually the group's 10th release, and it's been described as Weezer's version of a long-lost Beach Boys alt-rock record. And as a matter of fact, there's actually a song titled Endless Bummer on it. So Weezer came here with photographer Sean Murphy, and they spent the day taking guerrilla-style photographs on the boardwalk there until they came to this place, the Westminster Lifeguard Tower, and they thought it was perfect. You know, the beachgoers that bookend the band in the shot just happened to be there, and I think it only added to the natural artiness of the photo. And you gotta love a guy with a metal detector, right? So the Westminster Lifeguard Tower here serves as somewhat of a shrine to hardcore Weezer fans. And if you look close, you'll even find etchings and messages on the boards right there. Looks just like Buddy Holly. But anyways, Weezer, the White Album. So we're standing on a corner here in Beverly Hills, California at the iconic and legendary Beverly Hills Hotel. And of course, this was the site of the famous album cover for Hotel California. It was shot right here. So let's take a look. At one time or another, this hotel has hosted virtually every movie star ever. And Don Henley said that Hotel California was intended to convey an atmosphere of faded glory and the loss of innocence. To design the record cover, the Eagles hired an art director named Kosh, and despite the definite un-rock and roll vibe here, it was hard to argue with someone who had made their reputation by designing iconic album covers like Abbey Road and Who's Next. So this is the park in Beverly Hills right across the street, and what they did is they had a telescoping lift right here, and they were trying to catch a shot during rush hour right at sunset, because it's a little foggy today, but the sunset's right behind it here. And David Alexander thinks they got the shot as he was bending down and reloading, and Kosh was using his back as a tripod to get the shot just before the sun went down. They had limited time. They were kind of freaking out too, because I guess it was a windy day and that telescoping lift was blowing all over the place. So reportedly it cost $60,000 to produce the art for the album cover, which is a lot of money even today, but I don't think you can argue with the results. It's a truly iconic picture. Hotel California. So there it is, 10 of the most iconic album cover locations here in Los Angeles. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you love classic rock, take the time and check out our library. There's some great episodes in there, if I don't say so myself. Thanks to all the artists and all the talented photographers for bringing us these cool album covers. For Tim, thanks for hanging with us. Peace out.